The day I decided to install a hidden camera in my own home was the day I admitted to myself that something was very, very wrong. For years, my wife, Emily, and I had what I thought was a good marriage. We had been together for 9 years, married for 5, and despite the usual ups and downs, I always believed we were solid. I worked as a software engineer, often putting in long hours to secure our future, while she ran a small online business from home. At least, that's what I thought she was doing. Lately, something had changed. At first, it was subtle. Emily started acting distant. She would put down her phone the moment I walked into the room. Her texts became more frequent, her laughter softer, yet somehow secretive. She stopped asking about my day. She started going out more, meeting up with friends I'd never heard of before, and when I asked about them, she dismissed my curiosity with a quick kiss or a change of subject. I chalked it up to stress. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe she needed space. But the signs kept piling up. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. As I stepped into the house, I heard muffled voices coming from our bedroom. My heart pounded. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked toward the door, listening carefully. Then silence. A second later, Emily walked out, her face flushed. She forced a smile, blocking the entrance to the room. "Hey, you're home early," she said. "Yeah, work let out sooner than expected." "Who were you talking to?" I asked, peering over her shoulder. "Oh, just Megan," she said, naming one of her few real friends. "We were on a video call." I hesitated, looking at her phone. The screen was dark. Something inside me twisted. That night, as Emily lay beside me, sound asleep, I stared at the ceiling, thoughts racing. My gut told me she was hiding something. But was I just being paranoid? I had to know. I spent the next few days researching hidden cameras. I found a discreet model, small enough to blend in, yet with crystal clear recording. The moment it arrived, I waited for Emily to leave the house before carefully installing it in our bedroom, the living room, and even the hallway leading to the front door. The setup took hours. I made sure each camera was perfectly positioned, capturing every angle without being obvious. When I was done, I sat back and stared at the blinking red light on my laptop screen. The cameras were live. All I had to do was wait. And so, the watching began. I started checking the footage every night after Emily went to sleep. The first 2 nights? Nothing. Just Emily working on her laptop, making dinner, and occasionally watching TV. But then, on the 3rd night, I saw something that made my heart stop. Emily sat on the couch, her phone in hand. At first, it seemed normal. But then I noticed the way she was smiling, a soft, intimate smile I hadn't seen in a long time. She was texting someone. I watched as she put down her phone and checked the front door. She adjusted her hair, straightened her dress, and then, after a deep breath, walked toward our bedroom. And that's where the recording ended for the night. I stared at the screen, my pulse hammering in my ears. Something was wrong. I had to keep watching. I barely slept that night. My mind was spinning with questions, doubts, and a sickening feeling I couldn't shake. Who was she texting? Why did she check the door like she was expecting someone? And why did she go straight to our bedroom after? The next morning, I acted normal. I kissed Emily on the cheek, made small talk over breakfast, and left for work as usual. But inside, I was unraveling. At work, I couldn't focus. My hands trembled over the keyboard as I pretended to code, but my mind was back home, replaying the footage over and over. When lunchtime rolled around, I locked myself in a conference room and checked the cameras remotely. More footage had been recorded since last night. My heart pounded as I clicked on the next video. Emily sat in bed, her phone in hand, smiling again. Her fingers danced over the screen as she sent rapid messages. Then she glanced at the door again. A minute passed. Then a soft knock. My stomach twisted. She got up, walked across the room, and cracked open the door. A man's voice whispered something too soft for the camera to catch. Emily giggled. Then, she stepped back, letting the man inside. He was tall, with dark hair and a confident stance. My hands clenched into fists as I recognized him. It was Mark, my best friend. I felt like someone had just punched me in the gut. Mark and I had been friends since college. He had been the best man at our wedding. We had spent countless nights playing video games, grabbing beers, and sharing life advice. And now, here he was sneaking into my bedroom in the middle of the night. The camera in the bedroom didn't have audio, but I could see everything. Emily sat on the bed, tucking her hair behind her ear, her lips curved into an inviting smile. Mark leaned down and whispered something in her ear, his hand brushing her thigh. I wanted to shut the laptop. I wanted to pretend I hadn't seen this. But I forced myself to keep watching. Mark pulled her into a slow, intimate kiss. Emily didn't hesitate. She melted into him, wrapping her arms around his neck, kissing him back with the same passion she used to have for me. The screen blurred as my vision filled with tears. They laughed together. She whispered something into his ear, and he smirked, lifting her up and carrying her to our bed. Our bed. My breathing turned shallow. My chest felt like it was being crushed under an invisible weight. I slammed the laptop shut. I couldn't watch anymore. I stumbled out of the conference room, barely holding myself together. My head was spinning, my hands shaking. I wanted to scream, to punch something, to destroy everything in sight. Instead, I forced myself to breathe. Not yet. I needed to be smart. I needed proof. That night, I didn't mention anything to Emily. She acted normal, maybe a little too normal. She even kissed me goodnight like nothing had happened. But I knew the truth now. The next few days were torture. Every evening, I checked the footage, and every night, I watched them together. It wasn't just a one-time thing. It was ongoing. They were meeting at least 3 times a week, sneaking around like 2 teenagers. I documented everything, the timestamps, the footage, even screenshots of their text conversations, which I managed to retrieve using a data recovery tool on Emily's phone while she slept. What I found made me sick. Their messages were disgustingly intimate, filled with inside jokes, confessions of love, and plans for their next meetups. But the worst part? She called me boring. She complained about how I worked too much, how I wasn't exciting enough for her anymore. Mark encouraged her. He told her she deserved better, that I was too focused on my job to see what was in front of me. And she agreed. I spent the next week planning my next move. I wasn't going to confront her just yet. No, I needed to hit both of them where it hurt the most. First, I reached out to Mark's fiancée, Sarah. Yes, he was engaged. Sarah and I had always been friendly, though we weren't particularly close. But now we had something in common. I sent her an anonymous email with the screenshots, videos, and timestamps. Within an hour, my phone rang. What the hell is this? Sarah's voice trembled with rage. I took a deep breath. It's the truth. I'm sorry. There was a long silence, then a sharp intake of breath.
He's dead to me.
I knew then that Mark's life was about to implode. Now it was time for Emily to face the consequences. I planned everything down to the last detail. I waited for Friday night, when Emily thought I was out of town for a work trip. I left the house early in the morning, making sure she believed I wouldn't be back until Sunday. Then I waited. At exactly 9:30 p.m., Mark arrived. I watched through my phone as Emily greeted him with a kiss, her arms wrapping around his neck like she hadn't just shared a bed with me the night before. That's when I knew I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to ruin them. I sat in my car, watching the live feed from the hidden cameras on my phone. 9:32 p.m., Mark was inside. Emily led him to the living room, laughing, her body pressed against his. She poured 2 glasses of wine, handing him one as they sat on the couch, our couch. My fingers clenched around the steering wheel. I had spent years building this home with Emily. I had sacrificed sleep, vacations, and personal time to create a future for us. And now, she was destroying it all without a second thought. But she had no idea that her world was about to come crashing down. I took one last deep breath and stepped out of the car. I walked up to the front door and inserted my key, twisting it loudly. From inside, I heard chaos. A loud gasp, a glass shattering against the floor, the scramble of hurried movements. I stepped inside and locked eyes with Emily. She was frozen. Mark was half standing, his face pale as he stared at me like a deer caught in headlights. The wineglass had slipped from Emily's hands, its deep red liquid spreading across the carpet like blood. "Hey, honey," I said, my voice dangerously calm. Emily's lips trembled. "Why you're supposed to be out of town." I let out a slow chuckle. "Yeah, I bet you wish I was." Then I turned to Mark. He had backed up a step, his hands raised slightly, like he was ready to bolt. "Going somewhere?" I asked. Mark swallowed hard. "Look, man, I can explain." I cut him off. "Oh, don't worry, Mark. I already know everything." I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen, and played a video. Emily's laughter filled the room, the recording from last week. Then came the soft knock. Then her whisper, "Come in before he gets back." Emily's face drained of color. Mark's jaw tensed. I tilted my head. "Still want to explain?" Emily shook her head violently. "It's not what you think." "Not what I think." I laughed coldly. "I think my wife has been screwing my best friend in my own house. And I have all the proof to back it up." I turned the phone toward Emily, swiping through photo after photo of her messages with Mark. Her own words. Her own betrayal. She staggered back, her hands covering her mouth. You went through my phone?" I took a slow step forward. "Oh, I did a lot more than that." Her breath hitched. "You set me up?" I smiled. "No, Emily. You set yourself up." Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, I cut her off. "You don't get to be sorry. Not after everything." Mark took another step back, inching toward the door. I turned to him. "You should stay, Mark." His eyes darted between me and Emily. "Man, I didn't mean for this to happen." I stepped closer, my voice turning ice cold. "Oh, but you did. And now you're going to pay for it." Mark swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" Right on cue, the door swung open. Sarah walked in. Mark's fiancée. Her eyes burned with pure hatred as she took in the scene, the spilled wine, the guilty expressions, and the fear in Mark's eyes. Emily's gaze snapped to me, realization finally hitting her. You told her?" she whispered. I smirked. "Of course I did." Sarah strode forward, her hands shaking as she threw a thick envelope at Mark's chest. "We're done." Her voice was like steel. ***. Mark caught the envelope, fumbled to open it, and his face fell. Inside were printouts of every text, every photo, every disgusting message he had sent to Emily. His eyes snapped up to me, rage and panic twisting his features. "You ruined my life." I let out a cold laugh.
No, Mark.
"You ruined your own damn life." Sarah turned on Emily next. "You're a disgusting, backstabbing." Her voice cracked with fury. "I defended you when people called you selfish. I actually thought you were my friend." Emily sobbed, shaking her head. "Sarah, please."
Slap.
Sarah's hand cracked across Emily's face, so hard that the sound echoed through the room. Emily staggered, clutching her cheek. "Oh my God. Don't you ever speak to me again." Sarah's voice was deadly quiet. Then she turned to me. "Thank you for telling me." I nodded. "He didn't deserve you," she scoffed, shooting Mark a final, disgusted glare before storming out the door. For a moment, there was silence. Then Mark snapped. He lunged toward me, rage overtaking his fear. "You think you're so smart, huh?" he spat, shoving me. I didn't budge. I just smiled. Then, I whispered the final nail in his coffin. "I also sent everything to your boss." His face went white. Mark worked for a high-profile company with a strict morals clause. If word got out that he had been sleeping with a married woman, ***, let alone cheating on his own fiancée, ***, his career was over. You didn't," he choked out. I shrugged. "You'll find out soon enough." Mark lost it. He swung his fist at me. I dodged, grabbing his arm and twisting it behind his back, slamming him against the wall. He yelped. Emily screamed. I leaned close to his ear. "Get out of my house." I released him, and he stumbled forward, panting. Emily rushed to him. "Mark." But he shoved her away. This is all your fault, he snarled. You said he wouldn't find out. Emily's face crumbled. But I thought.
Mark didn't wait to hear the rest.
He bolted for the door, yanking it open and disappearing into the night. As soon as he was gone, Emily collapsed to her knees, sobbing. She looked up at me, her face a wreck of guilt and despair. Please don't leave me, she whispered. I stared at her for a long moment. Then, I pulled out one last envelope and tossed it at her feet. Emily picked it up with trembling hands. She opened it and gasped. Divorce papers. She looked up at me, her face twisting in shock. No, please. We can fix this. I just shook my head. There's nothing left to fix. Tears streamed down her face. But I love you. I let out a bitter chuckle.
No, Emily.
You loved the comfort I gave you. You loved the security. I leaned in, my voice calm and final. But you sure as hell didn't love me. She broke. As I turned to walk away, I heard her sobbing harder, begging me to stay. But I didn't stop. I walked out that door into the cold night, finally free. In the days following the confrontation, Emily's perfect life crumbled before her eyes. The morning after I served her the divorce papers, I moved out of the house. I had already planned everything. I rented an apartment, had my essentials packed in advance, and even set up a meeting with my lawyer to finalize everything. Emily, on the other hand, was completely unprepared. She called me nonstop, pleading, crying, even threatening to hurt herself if I didn't come back. But I wasn't falling for it. She had made her choices. And now, she had to live with them. A week later, she lost most of her friends. Sarah wasted no time in exposing her betrayal to their mutual social circle. The same people who once adored Emily, who admired her, supported her, turned against her overnight. She was ostracized. People who had once invited her to brunch and weekend getaways now avoided her calls like the plague. But the worst part? Mark wanted nothing to do with her. Mark's life imploded even faster. After our confrontation, his boss found out everything. I had sent the evidence anonymously, attaching screenshots of his messages and pictures of him sneaking into my house. The company had a strict no-scandal policy, and within 3 days, Mark was called into HR and fired. His reputation? Destroyed. Sarah, being the sharp and ruthless woman she was, took things a step further. She had a lawyer draft up a defamation case against him, citing the emotional distress he caused by cheating and humiliating her publicly. He was now fighting 2 legal battles at once, dividing assets with Sarah and trying to salvage his career. Rumors spread like wildfire. Nobody in our city wanted to hire a man who had been exposed for cheating with a married woman. Soon, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that Mark had to move out of his condo because he could no longer afford the rent. 1 month after the confrontation, Emily reached out again. I was at my new apartment, feeling lighter than I had in years, when my phone buzzed. It was a long text from Emily. I know I messed up. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to understand that I never stopped loving you. I got caught up in something I regret every single day. Please, just talk to me. I don't want to lose you forever. I stared at the screen, shaking my head. She still didn't get it. She wasn't sorry for cheating. She was sorry for getting caught. I ignored the message. The next day, she showed up at my apartment. She was a wreck, her hair a mess, dark circles under her eyes, her face swollen from crying. Please let me in, she begged. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You shouldn't be here, Emily. She swallowed hard, tears spilling down her cheeks. I don't know what to do without you. I sighed. You should have thought about that before you threw everything away. Her hands trembled. I was stupid. I was selfish. But I swear, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I shook my head. I don't need that. I've already moved on. Her expression collapsed. Moved on, she whispered, voice breaking. You don't mean that. I held her gaze, my voice steady. I do. Tears streamed down her face. So that's it. I nodded. That's it. She sobbed harder, but I didn't comfort her this time. I had wasted enough years of my life on her. I shut the door. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. Closing the door on Emily that night felt like closing a chapter of my life, one filled with betrayal, heartbreak, and deceit. But it was also the beginning of something new, a fresh start. Over the next few months, I focused on myself. I dove into work, finally pursuing a promotion I had put off for years because I was always too busy catering to Emily's needs. I hit the gym, got in the best shape of my life, and started spending more time with real friends, people who actually cared about me, not the superficial social circles Emily had forced me into. For the first time in years, I felt alive. Emily's life, on the other hand, kept spiraling downward. After our divorce was finalized, she had to sell the house, the same house where she had betrayed me, because she could no longer afford the mortgage on her own. She moved into a small apartment, but without me supporting her lifestyle, she was struggling. Nobody wanted to associate with her. She reached out a few times, trying to keep the conversation light and casual, but I never responded. I had nothing left to say to her. She had made her bed. Now she had to lie in it, alone. Mark was doing even worse. With no job, a pending divorce, and no credibility left in his professional field, he had to leave the city. I later heard from mutual acquaintances that he was living with a relative, desperately trying to find work, but unable to land anything stable. The man who had once thought he was untouchable was now at rock bottom. I didn't feel sorry for him. He had betrayed me in the worst way possible, and now he was paying the price. Karma had done its job. One evening, months later, I was sitting in a cozy cafe, sipping my coffee, when I met someone new. Her name was Rachel. She had an easy smile, a warm laugh, and none of the pretentious, self-absorbed energy that Emily carried. We started talking, and before I knew it, I was smiling again, genuinely. For the first time in a long time, I realized something important. Emily had never been my happiness. She had been my burden. And now that she was gone, I could finally be free to find something real. If there's one thing I learned from this whole experience, it's that trust is everything. Betrayal doesn't just destroy relationships, it shatters the very foundation of what you believed in. But it also gives you something powerful, a chance to rebuild. And that's exactly what I did. I let go of the past, and I stepped into a future that was finally, truly mine.